I always start every presentation with some belief statements. And the first belief statement is that I believe that all kids can learn at high levels. We can take any child, no matter where they are starting from, and we can create the conditions under which they can learn at high levels. And that is a belief that is driven throughout the system here at ISP. The second thing that I believe is that every student is unique. Kids come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. My two girls that I mentioned were as different as night is from day. My older one is driven, focused, academic, socially awkward. My younger one is creative and flighty and disorganized. And the system has to make room for those two kids, even though they are very different. And across families, we have to make sure that we're making room for kids in their uniqueness, and not just acknowledge their uniqueness, but celebrate their uniqueness and build upon that uniqueness so that they can understand who they are and how they can contribute to the world. That's part of our core belief here. The third core belief is that as a result of being here in this school, in this country at this time, we can make a difference in their life. If it's just a status quo experience, if you're just plugging in for a little while and it could be as good as anywhere else, we are not doing our job. We want that experience here at ISP such that it changes the trajectory of their life for the positive. And so that's what we're about. We also always want to remind our families of our mission, which is to inspire, engage, and empower learners so that they will become curious, competent, compassionate change makers. That's the objective of everything we do. Now, mission statements are a dime a dozen. You see them on walls all the time. Here we really try hard to align everything that we do to this mission, and the 4 C's in particular, where you're going to hear more about today, and how we align our curriculum and our experiences to those 4 C's, which is really the skills and abilities we want kids to be able to have. So we've got a short video, 2 minutes, that characterizes a little bit about our mission in action, and it focuses specifically on seniors. And I want to show it to you because it frames really what we're about. We're going to talk about curriculum, but really it's about kids and their experiences. That is the outcome we're after. So let me show this to you real quick.
One of the best ways for us to eliminate our own biases is through open discussion.
I'm showing how without this specific tool, we would never be able to know for certain we are causing climate change.
I was really pondering about what ways I could engage with AI.
The Senior Showcase is a chance for all of the 12th graders to show all of the work that we've done this year, especially as part of the IB.
And the 3 main components of it are the TOK exhibition, the extended essay, which we call the EE, and then there's the CAS, which is a combination of creativity, activity, and service.
How does this whole Senior Showcase relate to the central mission and values of ISP? We talk in the school about curiosity, and about competencies, about developing compassion, and about becoming change makers. Across the TOK exhibition, the extended essay, and the CAS program, there are multiple opportunities for students to be curious and follow that curiosity to look for answers in systematic ways that are based on reason and evidence. Also to develop various competencies, to develop compassion, especially in things like community service, and to become change makers in different ways.
What we are really starting to see is the 12th graders mentoring the 11th graders. These are very aspirational goals for these components of the program. Having them display and having them talk to one another, it really does give them that more systematic and holistic look at what knowledge is and what they're doing in their subjects, how everything fits together. And we're really seeing that come out today.
The 4 C's that we want to create: curious, competent, compassionate change makers is what we're about. And we made a strategic decision this year to begin to adopt the International Baccalaureate full continuum. And so tonight we're about, what is this thing anyway? Why are we thinking about it? And what does it mean for our kids? That's what we're trying to answer tonight. So in order to think about this, how did we get to this place? So let me first talk about what IB is. So if you think about IB, often is likened to the diploma program. So when kids say, oh, I did IB, means I got an IB diploma often, and they make that connection between International Baccalaureate, or IB, and the diploma. In reality, IB is a brand. So think about a car. Volkswagen is a brand. You might purchase a Passat, or a Jetta, or a Bug, or a microbus, right? The car, that car, the Jetta or the Passat or whatever, is the actual model. Volkswagen is the brand. International Baccalaureate is the brand, and they have 4 programs. And we're going to talk about the 4 programs. There's the PYP, the primary years program, the MYP, the middle years program, the DP, the diploma program, and we've had that program here for over 20 years, and the CP, the career pathways program. We are a DP, diploma program school, and we are adopting the other 3 programs here at ISP. And that's important to understand that, that distinction.
The International Baccalaureate is a global learning community of inquiring students, passionate educators, and engaged parents. Around the world, more than 4,000 schools offer a different kind of learning experience, where we all strive to be open-minded, inquiring, risk-taking, reflective, principled, and caring. 4 programs of education for 3 to 19-year-olds make up the IB Continuum, challenging learners everywhere to excel in their studies and personal growth. It starts with the primary years program, which sets up the IB's youngest learners to be curious and self-motivated, both in the classroom and in the world outside.
When I researched the IB, I was by far the most excited about it. And it was really the focus on, I'd say, the social emotional skills and the deeper level thinking skills that I felt there was such an emphasis on, the critical thinking, the reflection.
I think it's just maybe a better person in general. I'm open to new ideas, I'm more caring. I remember I have to do this better. It's like, let's say, I'm nervous, I have to be more of a risk taker. If I am being kind of mean, I'll say I have to be more caring.
The middle years program encourages learners to make practical connections between their studies and the real world.
I honestly think the most important skill we're learning right now is analyzing, because not only do you analyze poetry or a text, you also can use it to your daily lives. Like at a situation that you can't understand, you can sit and break it down into how you can deal with the situation, how you can solve it.
In the MYP, students are connecting what they are learning to real life. So it makes it more relevant for them and more meaningful.
The diploma program develops students who are able to flourish physically, intellectually, emotionally, and ethically.
I feel like if I had gone to any other school, I wouldn't have gotten all this training, I would say, in being aware that there are people out there that are different from me. And I feel like it's really helped me to understand these differences. And I feel like after IB, I can go out into the world and be successful wherever I go.
They're going to go into the world and they're going to be successful, but that success is for others as well. You know, they want to be successful for the community, for the world. It's not about personal gain all of the time. And so they're going out with a sensitivity as to their role in the world.
The career-related program equips learners with a combination of academic, practical, and emotional skills for the modern world.
Mi experiencia en la IB ha sido muy grata para mí, pues es una manera para crecer tanto como persona y tanto profesionalmente, ya que esto va dirigido a que pueda seguir mis estudios de manera profesional y de una manera internacional, ya que esto me abre las puertas no solo de aquí recibir una educación que se base solo en el sistema de México, sino algo más internacional, algo más profesional.
We see students starting with the usual sort of teenage worries and concerns and nervousness, and coming out as really competent, confident young people, able to talk to adults, to head things up, to lead things with a massive community awareness. They do projects and services within the community. So they have a much bigger appreciation of their local community, but a global awareness as well.
The IB Continuum. Education for a better world.
As you heard in the short presentation from the IB Continuum is a series of 4 programs. The IB has been around for over 60 years. It was developed initially in the late 1960s, early 1970s. Over 5,000 schools are currently involved in the IB. It's a very robust, rigorous, well-regarded program. So the question is, why are we doing this now? So what's the deal? And it's interesting because I did a series of listening sessions in our community over the first 3 or 4 months that I was here. And I was looking for themes that I was hearing from parents, from teachers, and from kids. So I interviewed parents and kids and teachers throughout the system over a course of about 3 months. And one of the themes that kept coming up over and over and over again was about curriculum. And what I heard was, well, there's a deep appreciation for the quality of teaching that's going on in the school, and there's a deep appreciation for the experience kids are having. What I heard fairly consistently is there was a lack of cohesion in the curriculum. That means it hanging together from one unit to the next, or alignment from one grade to the next. So vertical alignment, where from one grade to the next grade to the next grade, there's a connection between the curricular units. We also heard a bit about what we call the rigor wall that happens in 11th grade when kids get into the IB, that they tend to hit this wall really hard. And we also heard about consistency between classrooms. And so those were things that I heard, and I charged our team with, all right, if these are things that we heard, how do we best solve for these problems? And if there was unlimited time and money, I believe that our school with our teachers could probably develop a curriculum and a framework that is as good as or better than the IB. The problem is we don't have unlimited time and money. Those are limiters for us. And so what we want to do is adopt those things that are well thought out and well articulated so that we can execute underneath those things and use our time and money to its highest and best use. The other thing that we heard from parents was portability. So if, like Liz, who I just met tonight, knows that she'll be here for a few years because she's connected with the embassy, we want to make sure that the experience that her children have can be here and can be portable to another situation at some point in the future. And the IB raises the likelihood of that happening successfully, especially for families that are in the international context. We also want to have attention to quality and make sure that we have quality assurance across the system, and we want to build a system of supports for our educators. So these are some of the reasons why we've gone to the IB. So 3 big reasons why it was particularly compelling for us about the IB as opposed to another framework. There are many out there. There's frameworks in Australia, the United States, other parts of Europe. Why this framework? Number 1 is because it's mission aligned. I've talked about our mission. If you look at the IB mission, which it says the IB aims to develop inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. That's theirs. It's been in place for a long time. Well, what's interesting is curious, inquiring, knowledgeable, competent, caring is compassionate, and creating a better and more peaceful world, change maker. Those words in their mission align exactly to our 4 C's. That's compelling to us. So there's not a lot of shifting that needs to be done to align the framework of the IB, and what we already believe is important. The second is what I mentioned, is that it allows us to go further, faster, because the framework is done. There's a lot of supports in place, and we can move faster to the place where we want to go. Thirdly is this notion of global connectedness. 5,000 schools, thousands of educators who are trained in the IB, they understand the language, they understand the framework. So when we're recruiting people to work with us, that they know their game already. Now, before I hand it off to the rest of our team, I want to give you a free pass. Education, actually most industries, have a lot of jargon. You're going to hear jargon. Things like PYP, MYP, CP, transdisciplinary learning, interdisciplinary learning, curriculum framework. There's all this stuff, okay? Give yourself a break. If you don't understand it, don't worry about it. Just say, could you tell me again what that means? You just use this funny word or this funny acronym. Forgive us. There's a lot of language. It is dense language, and the IB, as good as they are horrible about dense language. So I want to give you a free pass right now around that component of it. So today's team, so I gave kind of the overview, why in the world are we doing this? Next, we're going to hear a little bit more about the IB and then the specific programs and what you might see in those programs. So that's the purpose of the rest of the night. So I've got Teresa, who you met, Sheldon, and Dr. Sturm, who will all be carrying the rest of this presentation. Teresa.
Great. Again, thanks for coming, and it's so good to see people in person this morning as well. So really appreciate you coming out this evening. I'm just going to kind of go to the slight next layer down about why this is a great decision and also how it's going to really bring us to the next level before Eric and Sheldon talk about program specific. So what I'm going to look at right now is where's the strength by having all four of the programs and what is true across all four of those programs and how does that align and improve ISP. I'm using this idea of synergy, and that's when two things come together and the sum is greater than its parts. And we really think the best of ISP along with the best of the IB coming together is going to be more than just 1 + 1. And that's what we want to look at a little bit closer right now by looking more closely at our mission pieces. Again, as Chip said, we really want this program coherence. We want deep, passionate learning, and ultimately we want curious, competent, compassionate change makers. So let's look at curious quickly here. So we have had this learning principle, and it's really foundational to ISP because we know, based on research, if students are curious, they're motivated. They're much more motivated to learn. They'll learn deeper, and the learning will stick with them. What's nice is the IB also believes in that, and they have a methodology. We have inquiry here in general, but they are going to take us to the next level of inquiry, be very specific so that it's more consistent and it goes deeper across all four programs. So where we are after is learners' curiosity really driving them. They're not doing it because they have to or they're told to by a teacher, but they're really driven to learn this and go deep and go further. And the IB will hold us accountable to having inquiry and facilitating that so that it nurtures curiosity. And you see from a very young age, from our earliest little learners, we really start with building and nurturing that curiosity through inquiry and building over time. So again, this match and the connection between, yes, we value curiosity and the IB is going to push us in the inquiry is going to bring greater program coherence and, most importantly, greater learning. Secondly, competence. Obviously, we know that the world needs competent people. And do they know where they are in their learning, in their skills, in their understanding, and where to go next? They need to own that. The more aware a learner is, we know, based on research, that actually their learning is much greater. So that metacognition. And we want them to wrestle with and consider and connect very complex ideas because they are the future. They are the leaders. They're the ones who need to solve the world's problems. And the IB, what they help us with is a clear articulation. We already have clear disciplinary skills, like what does it mean to be a scientist? And what are the skills needed? What are the skills needed for a mathematician? What the IB is going to add is those transdisciplinary. Regardless of where you go, you need to be a great communicator. You need to be a great thinker. How do we scaffold that, and how do we really coherently map that and develop that in our learners? As well as, it's a conceptual framework. So what are the big ideas, and how do those build over time? So this is where, again, those two together bring us greater coherence and greater learning. So compassionate. Obviously, this has always been a strong suit of ours. We repeatedly hear from new families and new students that it's a very welcoming and inclusive community. We want to continue that. We continually hear that we establish that sense of safety and belonging. And we also know you absolutely need a foundation of that safety and belonging for you to learn. Okay, so that's key. And the IB supports us that in methods and accountability. How do we build those healthy relationships? How do we make sure when you're doing collaborative group work that everybody is taking shared responsibility and building the skills to be a team player over time? Lastly, obviously we want people who are going to make a difference, a positive difference in the world. And to do that, you need to be able to take what you learn and apply it in different contexts. So I have to take my skills as a scientist and be able to apply that into new problems, new challenges, as well as different contexts, and persist with it. We know that the problems that we face are not easy, and great leaders and people who make a difference, they stick with it, even when it gets difficult, even when they have failures. So we want that persistence. And again, the IB operationalizes that through their service and action programs. So really an organized way to develop that perseverance, to develop those ways to apply in different contexts each and every year that they're learning. And ultimately, like Chip said, we want it, they want it, the world needs it, positive contributors and change makers. So again, if we think about ISP is known for its innovation, and it's always trying to improve and being at the edge of education. And I think what the IB is helping bring to us is to make sure that we're accountable to making that happen consistently and coherently across the system. We are a place of possibility. We hire great people who believe in possibility and the possibility of children. And simultaneously, we have families and teachers who move from system to system. We're an international school. So that transferability that Chip talked about is key. We have great colleagues. We have a huge number of people who apply for jobs here, so we have great selection. That's just going to get greater, not only for people who we attract, but we are now connected to this huge network of people. Almost 2 million students right now in IB programs. So we know there are a lot of teachers and ways of doing things that we can learn with and from as we move forward. So it's a nice balance, the best of ISP and the best of IB together. So to make this happen next year, we're going to have time, teaming, and training. So in terms of time, as you saw, we sent it out in December. We are going to have late starts every Wednesday. That means at 7:30, faculty will begin, and we'll have 90 minutes every week to come together as teams to learn the IB, redo units, work on this collaborative, this pedagogy, learn from coaches that we're bringing in, key coordinators. And so that time, that weekly time, it only makes a difference for the students, about a half hour, but they'll have 90 minutes every single day. And then the teaming, we know also an impact on learning is when people plan together and they do it together. And rather than planning on your own, the more they do it together, the higher quality and the more consistency we'll see in the learning. And then lastly, the IB does require specific training that all of our teachers get, and that will be embedded into this time next year as well. So we think it's a great formula to really bring the synergy of ISP and IB together. So again, that's just true across all 4 of the programs, or the continuum as we say. And so now to unpack further, I turn it over to Sheldon and Eric. They're going to talk about the specific programs.
Okay. Thanks, Teresa. So, as Chip mentioned, there are 4 IB programs, and he also mentioned that there's a lot of jargon. So in a really valiant effort to get rid of the jargon, they came up with 4 models, beautiful pictures that I don't really know if it helps clarify things all that much. It's just words in a different shape now. So we're going to go through this bit by bit because these are actually important models to go through, and it shows the consistency as well as how things are going to change for us here at ISP. So the important part is that all 4 of these programs start with the idea of international mindedness, that we are in a connected world. We've got so many people from all over the world here. It's how do we connect in together, and what's our responsibility as part of that? All programs start with that. But in the middle of all these programs is something called the learner profile. That is something that we should see in every classroom, and it's what do we think that our kids should be? Who are we trying to make in this social environment of a school? And so the IB's got 10 different attributes that they believe, and they align very nicely to what we're doing, that all learners should work on. They should have these attributes and try to improve them over time. And that's everything from how to be a thinker, how to be balanced, how to be reflective, caring, being principled, what does that mean right now? And so that is at the core of every program, and it's the students at the center. The next layer out on all these models is an IB approach to teaching and an IB approach to learning. But here at ISP, we've already got our learning principles. We've got our own nice little graphic that goes with it. That isn't changing. This is still what we believe is best for learning, that learners are able to apply their learning in diverse and challenging contexts. They know where they are and how to go further. But in a classroom, how do you do this? That's the piece the IB helps us with. And so with the IB's approach to teaching, and I just listed the IB standards and practices, there's a great big list of this is what teaching should be in every single classroom from ECF 3 all the way up to grade 12. Practically, how do we do it? And then these approaches to learning skills, that these are skills that we actively develop with students. A number of school frameworks talk about these things. I think traditionally a lot of people call them 21st century skills. But how does that happen? You're in a science class. That often isn't at the forefront. This is at the forefront, again, of every IB class. It's taught, it's assessed, it should be everywhere, because these are the skills that our kids are going to need when they take their jobs in the future that don't exist yet. Our next layer out is where things start getting program specific. So if we look at the PYP for 1 second, I know those words are fairly small. It all starts with agency. The idea that you might be a student and you might have a teacher who's far older and far more experienced as a learner, but you need to take a little bit of control. And this is where the students know where they are and how to go further. What are you interested in? How do you take things that you've learned, ask another question? How do you move it forward? And then that's the action component. What do you do with that? And this is the first time we see, here it's called the exhibition. That's a capstone project. So in grade 5 at the end of PYP, you've got a fairly major research project. It's collaborative, has a lot of student voice in it. So what do they want to study? And that's the end of the PYP. And as we move into the MYP, again, we've got the idea of action. What are you doing with what you're learning? And brings in the concept of service. It's great that you've learned all of these things, but how are you giving back? What are you doing with that in the real world? And there's 2 capstone projects, one at grade 8, one at grade 10. And then we move into DP, and it's that same idea. How do you apply what you're learning in the real world? How do you take some responsibility for your part in this global community, as well as a capstone project? So there's a lot of through lines that go through all of these, and you can start to see the programmatic consistency that our kids are going to get all the way through is really enhanced by this framework around it. And because this is also still important, we won't go into the details too much right now on these, there is all the content there as well. You still need to know math, you still need to know science, you still need to know how to read, write, those sorts of things. That is part of this as well, but it's all within a context. So this is why these models are important, But just looking at it like this, it's really hard to figure out what they're talking about. So the primary years program, this is from ECF 3 up to grade 5. So it's 7 years, and it does still have the same 6 core subject areas that we have right now. You still got your math, your science, your arts, social studies, language, physical and health education. And there are still standalone units in there. Kids will still know how to add, multiply, subtract, divide, all of those sorts of base skills, those foundational skills moving forward. But where possible, we try to do things in a transdisciplinary way. And that's looking at things from a big idea and use the subject areas as a way to understand those big ideas. So for example, one unit might be human migration is driven by economic, political, environmental, and cultural factors. Human migration is a thing. People are always moving around this planet of ours. That's a big idea for kids to understand. And this is a real unit that's taught in grade 4. So if we look at one of these transdisciplinary themes, sharing the planet is one of them, how could we understand that big idea through the idea that we're all sharing the planet? Well, that could be looking at the science of climate change. How are people moving around in response to what's going on with our environment? We could be trying to understand it through what are our rights and responsibilities for people moving or for us moving. Maybe we could look through the UN Sustainable Development Goals and take a look at what that means in relation to human migration. Lots of math involved in this, whether it's from the science side or from the social studies side. And language everywhere. So the idea is to understand these big ideas through the lenses of the subject areas. It's actually fairly similar to some of the things we're doing now, but this puts a stricter framework around it. So we've got that consistency moving forward. Now the nice thing is, that big idea, this would be a fantastic unit. But it also allows us to be a little bit more responsive. If you look at everything that's gone on around Europe recently, but even in the last 2 or 3 years, could we adjust that unit to take a look at human migration with a local context? So our local context looking at this might be very different to someone studying that same thing in the United States. So there's lots of ability to adjust to make things real for students to understand that big idea. And as I mentioned, there's a capstone project. We have something in grade 5 right now called the PIP, Personal Inquiry Project. It's very similar to that. Students work together to research and unpack a big idea, something they're curious about. But what this does is it puts a bit of a lens to it through one of those transdisciplinary themes. So as an example, this year we might decide that we're going to look at the theme sharing the planet, which means that we're looking at the UN Sustainable Development Goals number 10, 11, and 12. Students are unpacking those and finding something that they're curious about to research through that. And it's a major project. It takes a very long time, but it's the end of grade 5 and all the skills that they've learned up to that point. And that transitions them very well over to the middle school.
Thank you, sir. And this is the IB Middle Years Program, or the MYP as it's called. And this is the first program that's really spanning 2 divisions, the middle school and the upper school, so grades 6 through 10. And this is the wheel for the MYP, and as Sheldon mentioned, lots of words in there, lots of things that you'll get used to seeing over time, but we're not expecting, there's no quiz at the end of tonight, by the way. One thing that's important to know is that, as Sheldon might have mentioned, the subjects are still being taught. So there's still math, there's still language arts, there's still social studies, still science. These 8 subject areas are all part of that MYP framework, okay? So grades 6 through 10. And we currently have a structure that supports that. One change you might see is around this design element. This is something that we currently have, but it's going to look a little bit differently as it's consistently structured throughout the program. And so look for some change, especially those of you that are with middle school age children, because the design element is going to be a little bit of a change. That's why it's in red. One of the things that I think is really unique about the MYP is this idea of interdisciplinarity. What that means is that students are looking at a real-world issue and combining 2 subjects to really examine that issue and come up with learning from that. And so We currently have interdisciplinary units, and I mentioned one here, Connecting Science and the Arts. That's a grade 7 unit where students are looking through a microscope at the cell and then actually using art to kind of represent that. That's something we currently do. So they're looking at art and science to combine to make some original conclusions. And so that's an MYP style interdisciplinary unit. But what the IB is doing and asking is that through their framework, we're having one of these units of study, one interdisciplinary unit through each year of the program. So grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. And that's going to help us because it's really codifying a lot of what we do and asking us to follow their framework, which will be helpful. And finally, as Sheldon mentioned, in all of the IB programs are these capstone projects, and they really are the culmination of learning for the program itself. In grade 8 is going to be the community project, and that is a collaborative inquiry into a real-life issue or problem, and it's really service-based, and so that's going to be exciting. And we already have some things that really line up very well with that. If you've heard of the Curator project, that's something we currently are doing. We're really looking at using the framework of the community project for the IB and that piece that we do currently in grade 8 and melding them together to kind of really give the students an opportunity to collaborate. The personal project, though, in grade 10 is going to be an entirely new innovation for us, and that's an individual inquiry into a real-life issue or problem again, and it's really focused on those things that Sheldon was bringing up, inquiry, action, and reflection. And I've seen some fabulous projects with the personal project, students doing things like creating a life raft that actually floats out of plastic bottles. I've seen using microfibers to make a bicycle that you can ride. If students are interested in the arts, they can pursue a line of inquiry into an artistic endeavor or into a piece of writing. There's just a wide variety of opportunities for students and a real celebration of their learning that will occur as that culminating project in grade 10. So that's going to be an exciting innovation that everyone can look forward to. Okay, just to review a little bit, you know that our upper school has had the diploma program, or it's called the DP, for some 20 years. And we're very proud of our DP program because it really is giving students a wide variety of opportunities to pursue advanced study in several areas. And for those of you that are familiar with it, there are 6 subject areas in the DP, and we offer a variety of courses in these areas. And so students are able to take courses from within these areas, and they're really tailored to the student's interests. That 6th group, the arts, has got a little star by it because that means that students are able to, if they would rather take another science, they can do it in that area. If they'd rather take another language, they can do it in that area. They don't have to take an arts, but we do offer theater arts. We do offer IB music. We offer visual arts. And we just have a whole array of subjects available here. But you'll see that this is parallel to what you're seeing in the MYP and the PYP. The subject areas all represented here. And like the other programs, the DP, really the culmination of the learning experiences are these capstone projects. The Theory of Knowledge course, which is really based on, for those of you that study philosophy, epistemology. It's really questioning the basis of one's knowledge and asking, how do you know what you know? The assumptions we make in our learning are all well and fine, but let's really bear down and ask, well, why do we know that? Who says that's true? The extended essay is a 4,000-word research essay that students do independently. And actually, those are 2 examples that came from our students this year. You can see they're quite sophisticated inquiries into their own passions about learning. And then finally, creativity, activity, and service. And as you have seen through some of what Sheldon's talked about in the PYP, and then it appears in the MYP, this idea of that students are engaging in a project in the real world that's really got a foundation in service. And they're acting upon that according to their own passions again. So those through lines in the capstone projects throughout all of those 3 programs so far are consistent and I think really interesting aspects of the IB in general. Then the newest program, it's called the CP, or the Career Related Program. And this is, we believe, going to offer students an additional opportunity that we've never been able to have. And it's, as I said, it's the newest of the IB programs. And it really is about students pursuing something that they're interested in towards their careers. They're still doing DP courses, so they're still doing English, math, or they could actually do more. So they're still taking content courses, and they're going to be with all the other students, but they're also doing subjects that are related to their career. And as I'm going to talk about in a minute, they're going to spend more time actually pursuing what's called the career-related studies. So whether they're interested in perhaps a business kind of course of study, or technology, or something within visual arts, they're really focusing on that as part of that career piece. And then there's the core. And I'm going to talk about these because I think they're important because they connect to what you saw throughout the other programs as kind of capstone experiences. The first of these is this reflective project. And that's looking at an ethical dilemma that comes up through their course of study in that career that they're interested in. They can do an essay or a presentation on that. They're still reflecting on it. And one thing, just so you get used to seeing this term, internally assessed means that the teachers at ISP are marking that work according to established criteria that the IB has provided, and that is actually moderated with examiners from around the world so that they look at how our teachers are marking and how our students are performing. That's occurring in the diploma program as well, but I think it's an interesting aspect of the IB that everyone is something that's really unique. Externally moderated means that examiners are looking at that, and perhaps you know that our students are sitting the IB exams in the month of May very soon for the diploma program. That's external moderation because that's just getting sent out to be marked by examiners all over the world. Service learning, again at the core of the CP as it is with the other program, very similar to the CAS program, the diploma program, but this service is related to the career study area. So, they're still doing a reflection in a portfolio. It's still being assessed internally, but everything's directed towards the career that is of interest to the student. And then this career-related study. So the students are spending part of the day it has to be an accredited outside organization. So perhaps it's something in design, in graphic arts and business studies, as it says there. It's focused, and we are looking at trying to provide students with real-world opportunities to support that. So through their internships and work experience and job shadowing, these aren't requirements, but we feel they dovetail nicely with the career-related study. And so we're trying to expand our opportunities for students in those areas, but we think that this is going to be the exciting addition to some of what we already have. So just so you understand, we know this isn't necessarily for all students. The majority of our students want to do the full IB diploma still. There are some students, though, that have this particular passion, and these are real actual case studies. A student that's really interested in coding, they already have a side business in this area, they know exactly they want to go in this, and they might not need those other diploma program courses. This is going to help them forward their goals and kind of launch directly into a career focus. Similarly with the photographer, the goal for this young lady was to go to school with a high emphasis on portfolios. She really wants to build that and develop experiences in photography and media so as to help build that portfolio up. That's what the CP is for. So we do think that it's going to enhance the opportunities for all students. Not everybody is going to necessarily go for this, but it's just going to be an extra piece that I think is going to be really nice complement to all of the IB programs that we're adopting. So back to our mission as at the foundation of everything.
And so that was an awful lot of information in a very short amount of time. I hope what comes through with this is everything that we try to do in the school is already aligned to this mission. But what these 4 IB programs should do is give us some guardrails there and help with the consistency through the program. So those transition points, grades 5 to 6, 8 to 9, grade 10 to 11 into the diploma, are a little smoother. Kids have got more experience going through this style of learning. We've got more consistency class to class, while all of these, our 4 Cs are still happening there. And it's in a portable environment so that if you leave from here, if you're going to another school that offers MYP or DP, there's a common language there already. So we're hoping is just going to strengthen what is already a strong program.